Hello and welcome back to the channel for a quick preview of the weekend's action coming up in One Championship. We've got two events, both happening on Friday. You've got One Friday Fights 58, that will be on pay-per-view, and then you've got One Fight Night 21 that will be on, your regular Prime Video or Sky Sports in the UK, whatever you watch those Fight Night events on. I won't go into either of these events super in depth as I usually would because I don't particularly think there's a ton to talk about in One Fight Night 21. And I already did a One Friday Fights preview on this channel with my guest, Tim Wheaton from Calf Kick Sports. Tim is fantastic with all things striking, kickboxing in particular, but he covers, a wide range of topics. And we spoke for like an hour on this very channel, mostly about that card and some other things as well. So you can check that out if you want more of an in-depth breakdown there. But let's talk a little bit about One Friday Fights 58 before moving on, because this card is very, very good. Pay-per-view, we spoke about that in the video with Tim, so I won't dive into that too much here. But you've got Alif taking on Zhang Peimian. I'm excited for that one. You could potentially, I think if Zhang wins that, you could definitely do the Jonathan DeBella rematch if he retains the title later on in the card. So that's a fun one to keep an eye on. Shadow back in action. That I'm excited to see that. Some really good fights on here. Sexan, of course, back for the first time this year after going, I believe it's 8-0 last year on Friday Fights. There might have been a fight night in there as well. I'm not too sure now, but yeah, good stuff. Excited to see him back in there. And then you got the big three fights, which again went in depth with Tim in that video on this channel, but Nong-O versus Kulabdam is a bit of a scary one, I think, for Nong-O because of how hard Kulabdam hits. So yeah, I don't feel great about that one, to be honest, but we will see how it plays out. Co-main event, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Jonathan DeBella defending the strawweight kickboxing world championship against the strawweight Muay Thai world champion, Prajan Chai, who, of course, is a phenomenal fighter and probably DeBella's toughest fight to date, not just in one championship. DeBella, I think, is really good. I'm a huge fan of his. If there's one knock against him, it's maybe he doesn't have the names on his resume that some of his, fellow world champions and peers have. I think definitely has the skills, but the jump from facing some of the people he's fought to fighting Prajanchai is a big jump. Will he be able to do it? I think it'll be a good fight. I would think a lot of people will be leaning towards Prajanchai. Of course, he is coming over to kickboxing, but a lot of people think that he will do very, very well. He has fought in kickboxing before, and he has so much experience in Muay Thai that you would imagine he will be able to adapt his skills very well. And I'm really excited for this one. I think that this should be a fantastic fight. And then main event: Superbon versus Marat Grigorian for the interim featherweight kickboxing world championship. I did speak to Marat Grigorian this week. That is over on the Violent Money TV channel. I'll put a link to it in the description. Just a quick interview with Marat talking about a few things. Of course, this is the trilogy fight between them. They fought once before in one championship. That was at 1X, where Superbon put on a kickboxing masterclass, in my opinion, to defeat Grigorian and defend his title at the time. Of course, he was on an unbelievable run at that point before losing the belt to Chingiz Alazov last year. Marat won their first fight that happened a couple of years before 1X. I believe it might have been 2018, where he stopped Superbon in the first round. And as I spoke about with Tim, those are kind of the two ways I think that this fight plays out. Either Grigorian is able to get to him early, a bit like Chingiz did, put the pressure on him, let his hands go, or we see Superbon control the range, control the pace, and do his thing and unleash his arsenal of kicks. I think that I would pick Superbon in this one ever so slightly. I just think that after watching what happened between them at 1X, that Superbon maybe is at a point now in his career where he can deal with the kind of patterns of Grigorian and his style. I know that Chingiz got to him at One Fight Night 6, I believe it was, in January last year, but Chingiz obviously on an incredible run himself. So winner here could get a rematch with Chingiz. I think that Superbon is maybe the more interesting rematch, to be honest, because whilst he did get dismantled when they last fought, if he's able to beat Grigorian here, he's been, in big fights ever since. And Grigorian, obviously fought Chingiz after Superbon did, and that was a pretty dominant win as well. So we'll see how this one goes, and then whether that's going to, set up the Alazov rematch for either guy. I hope it does. But yeah, we will wait and see on that. Let me just switch the screen over here. to talk about one Fight Night 21 that goes down on the same day. Obviously, it will be after that event. One Friday Fights is at Asian prime time. So, at least for me here in the UK, it'll be like midday. It'll be the morning for people in the US. And then this one will be on in the morning over in Thailand, both at Lumpini Stadium. But this one will be at American prime time instead. So let's talk about this card. You've got Jeremy Pakatu back in the opening bout of the night at bantamweight. Good to see the bantamweight division remaining active because it's done that so far. And yeah, I just think it's good to see these divisions active, as I've gone into many times. Bout number 3 is an interesting one. I think Hiroyuki Tetsuka taking on Valmir Da Silva. This is a rescheduled fight. I believe they were supposed to fight in Japan, if I'm not mistaken, or it was maybe one of the Fight Night cards that we've already had this year, but this one has been put together. I'm glad to see it get put back together, to be honest, because I think it's a good competitive fight. I think Tetsuka will probably be the guy that a lot of people are going towards here. But a competitive fight, I think, and yeah, I'm excited to see how that one plays out. You've got, of course, you know, the big talking point for this card is the fact that we have both Ruotolo brothers on this card, which means 2 submission grappling contests on this card at Lumpini. It'll be interesting to see how those go down. I did speak about this a little bit with Nick Atkin on the One on SK podcast on the Sportskeeda MMA Originals channel, so you can check those out. If you go onto that channel and go to live, I believe it is, that's where the replays are. So check that out. But you've got Kay Rotolo here, not defending his lightweight submission grappling world championship, but instead competing in a catch weight against Francisco Lowe. Yeah, I don't think I like the idea of the Ruotolos being on the same card more than maybe I like the experience. I think it's cool that they're both on this card, but you know, and I think that they've done it cleverly to not have them next to each other on the card, if that makes sense, to split it up a little bit. And in that way, you know, you've kind of got, in my opinion, a little bit of a, you know, when you're watching an MMA promotion or something, or like the UFC where you have a prelim card and then your main card, and you tend to have like a half-hour break in between. It's like this kind of breaks up the card, I think, with these 2 submission grappling contests. Although obviously the second one is a title fight and a co-main, so that is kind of when you're getting to the final few fights of the card. But Kay Bertolo being in this position, bout number 5, I think kind of splits up the card quite nicely, to be honest. Bout number 6 is Jacob Smith versus Dennis Puric. We've spoken again. I spoke with Nick about potentially, you know, the winner of this fight. Specifically, I think if Jacob Smith wins, potentially fighting Rodtang at some point in the near future. It looks like we're going to get Rodtang and Takeru in Japan, in between those 2 American cards, Denver and Atlanta. So maybe it won't be next, you know. I think, you know, when me and Nick were talking about it, we were potentially speaking about if Rodtang was in the US, who would he be fighting? And I think that Jacob Smith with a win here would make some sense for sure. But it does look like we're going to get Rodtang Takeru. So whether that will come to fruition, I don't know. But it could still be a big moment for either guy to get a win and get on the microphone and potentially call out Rodtang. And, you know, if that Takeru fight doesn't happen, then that is a good other alternative. Bout number 7, you've got Ben Tainan taking on Duke Didier at heavyweight. A good test, I think, for Ben Tainan in his second one championship fight. Of course, you know, a decent amount of potential with him. He did win his one championship debut against Kang Ji-won last year. I believe that was one fight night 16 off the top of my head. And Duke Didier, you know, heavyweight grappler. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, the one heavyweight division is pretty much grapplers, right? Hence why Anatoly Malakin has been so effective, because he's a good wrestler, but also a better striker than the rest of the division, I would say. So yeah, interesting to see how this one plays out. I think that, you know, if you're going to look at Ben Tainan being in a big fight in the next year or so, then you probably need him to get a win here, and a fairly convincing win, I think, because, you know, the win over Kang Ji-won was good. He looked good. If this fight with Duke Didier is close, then you're probably looking at, you know, it's going to be too quick for him to jump in against, you know, a Rug or a Buchecha, I think. So, you know, if he looks good here, then I think we definitely could get one of those matchups next. And then, you know, if he wins that, you're looking at a 3-fight win streak, and he's got a top name there on his record. So you may be looking at a title fight already, or at least a title eliminator. Bout number 6, number 8 rather, you've got Vladimir Kuzmin back in action. He, of course, fought in Qatar on March 1st and got a win there. He is taking on Sua Black. That's a fun one. I originally had wanted to see Kuzmin face Nong-O. They were, you know, booked for Qatar, and then Nong-O got rearranged for the Friday Fights card that we already spoke about. So yeah, be interesting to see how this one goes down. I didn't think Kuzmin looked fantastic in Qatar, to be honest. So, and I am very high on him. So, yeah, I'm not too sure about this one, to be honest. That last performance has kind of thrown it up in the air for me. So, interested to see how he gets on against Suar Black here. Co-main event: Ty Rotolo taking on Isaac Mitchell in the welterweight submission grappling world championship contest here. One of the things I like about this matchup is that whilst some people might not be familiar with Isaac Mitchell and his past as a submission grappler, Ty Rotolo did actually call his name. I don't remember. I think it was when he won the title, and they asked him about potential opponents in the ring, and he asked, he said a couple of names, and one of them was Isaac Mitchell. So I think that it's hard to complain about the caliber of opposition that One Championship is bringing in for some of these submission grappling world championship contests when Ty himself has mentioned this guy by name. So clearly he was a guy that was on his radar. I know that he's competed in some other like big tournaments and things like that. So I'm not going to, claim to be a submission grappling expert or to claim to have seen a lot of Isaac Mitchell's game. I know that he does tend to be quite an aggressive grappler, but obviously coming up against the Ruotolos, it's quite hard to look aggressive against those guys, right? With their insanely high pressure and high pace output, constantly chaining submission attacks. So it'd be interesting to see how he copes with that. But yeah, we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding, I think, with this card and how these two grappling contests play out. Would it have been better to maybe have the Ruotolos together on one of the American cards? Could that still happen? Very much, I think. So yeah, we will see. And then the main event, you've got Regian Ursel taking on Alexis Nicolas, defending his lightweight kickboxing world championship. Alexis Nicolas, bit of a strange opponent to come into this spot, I think, in a lot of people's eyes. He only has one win in one championship, and he looked good. But I definitely think, people watched that fight and saw, people didn't watch that fight and go, oh my God, put this guy in there with Ursel right now, right? They were like, oh, this guy's good, but, is he ready for the top tier of competition in one championship? I'm not sure. I think that it's, at the same time, I wouldn't want Regian Ursel to have to sit out because one championship can't get him an opponent. So I would rather see him active than anything else. We do, of course, have a big fight coming up. I believe it's One Fight Night 22 that they have announced. Sinta McClinby taking on Dmitry Menshikov. So you potentially got someone earning a rematch with Regian Ursel there. But in terms of how I expect this fight to go, I expect it to be a Regian Ursel fight. I expect the first round to be probably the most competitive round of the fight, and then over time it gets less competitive. Of course, Alexis Nicolas, explosive guy, powerful guy, tends to fight in big moments. Can you do that against a guy that's as smart as Regian Ursel? I would say probably not. But, if he's able to create some big moments early on, he might be able to catch Regian Ursel cold before he's able to really start to dictate the fight. But, it will be a hell of an upset if he's able to do it. We will leave it there. Thank you for checking out this preview for both cards. Let me know what you're most excited about in the comments below. What's your favorite fight across this whole weekend? I think it's pretty hard to look past those top two fights on One Friday Fights 58. Personally, the Belarusian Prajanchai and Superbon Grigorian are two fantastic matchups, hence why that card is on pay-per-view, right? As I mentioned, go check out my video with Tim that is on this channel where we spoke all about that card in a bit more detail and some other good stuff in there too. And my interview with Marat Grigorian is up on Violent Money TV. And yeah, that'll do it. So I hope everyone enjoys the fights, and I will catch you some point in the next week to chat about what went down and to look forward to some more exciting stuff in One Championship. All right, catch you soon.